What's good, guys? Welcome back to Small Talk on Head-to-Head Fantasy Basketball. Right today, you're joined by two hosts. My name is Alan.
And I'm Anson. Today we're going to be covering top 30 to 45 and our part three of our reaction to ESPN head-to-head points rankings.
Yeah, so we'll be breaking down and kind of just going through their rankings and giving our thoughts on where they should be at, or they're too high, too low for fantasy. So without further ado, let's get started. We got Mikhail Bridges, Jalen Brown, Jimmy Butler, Darius Garland, and Julius Randle. Oh, sorry, stink peeked on that last one. So we start with Mikal Bridges, right? I think Mikal Bridges, he's more known that he's not gonna miss games. He's able to stay healthy. But I feel like those are on his when he wasn't a primary offensive threat. Now he's stepping onto the Nets. If he's able to continue to stay healthy, obviously I think these stats are skewed because I feel like this was when he was a role player. But I think his stats this year should be a lot higher. But overall, I think if Mikal Bridges becomes the number one option, develops well, I feel like he's going to be a very, very solid player. And if his ability to stay healthy and continue to play 82, 83 games, I feel like that will make him a higher ranking than 31, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think they definitely got it wrong here with his 21 point per game average. Post trade deadline as a number one option in 27 game sample size, he was able to average 26 points per game. So, in my opinion, if I'm projecting Mikal Bridges anywhere from 24 to 28 points per game, is a pretty good projection for him. I do think this 31 rank is fine for him. I think he's around this level. The fact that he doesn't miss games last year, even with most of his season being a role player, he was still able to average or he was still able to be the 18th best fantasy player. So if he's going to stay in this number one option role for the entirety of the season and play every single game, he might be a top 12 fantasy players in terms of total.
Yeah, I could easily see him, being top 12 in totals. If he's able to consistently play every single game. But moving on from Macau, right, we got Jalen Brown. Jalen Brown, I feel like he's a very interesting topic as of right now because we just saw the Drew Holiday trade happening, right? Obviously, Drew Holiday is on the Celtics now. So the Celtics have Tatum, Drew Holiday, Jalen Brown, and Kristaps Porzingis. So when Brown comes in, the picture is like we thought initially, he would be more of a playmaker, he would help us assist more. But obviously, since Drew is there, Drew is now there, right? Drew isn't gonna be their offensive, isn't gonna be used as their offensive tool. I think they're gonna use him more as a playmaker and more as a defensive end compared to allowing Jalen Brown, Tatum, and Kristaps to be operating off the offensive end. So I feel like for that, Jalen Brown should still score at a relatively high level. I don't think Drew's gonna impact his scoring or even Kristaps, in my opinion. Um, Overall, I feel like Drew is one of those players that could still improve. He is still young. He just signed a big contract. So I think comparing what he did last year to this year, maybe he becomes a little bit more efficient. Maybe he has a left hand now. But overall, I feel like I'm looking for a solid season for Jalen Brown this year.
Yeah, I could definitely see the scoring going down just because Boston is just so stacked offensively now. Hopefully, the turnovers go down with Drew Holiday handling the ball more. I honestly think that 32 is slightly high for Jalen Brown just because you're adding two 20 point per game scorers onto the team. So I think maybe late 30s, 36 to early 40s is a pretty good range for Jalen Brown. It really depends on what position Jalen Brown plays. If they're going to play him at small forward because White and Holiday are the two guards, then I like him as a small forward more. If they're going to play Al Horford at the four, Kristaps at the five, and obviously Tatum's at the three, then Brown will be at shooting guard. Then I don't like him as much, but regardless, he should be drafted after 40, before 45, but I think 32 is slightly early.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know how they're projecting to play 85 games too. Very interesting.
Maybe
But
just traded.
but let's talk about Jimmy Butler now, right? Obviously, Jimmy Butler, he's not happy about the whole Damian Lillard to the Buck situation, right? We obviously see him calling out the Bucks for tampering. Obviously Jimmy Butler wanted Damian Lillard to be on his team so they could have a good playoff run this season. That just didn't come to just didn't come to fruition, right? They couldn't, meet on either side. So what does that mean for Jimmy Butler? I feel like Jimmy Butler understanding that he's not gonna have that, superstar teammate might make him play a little better, right? But you guys have to understand, Jimmy Butler is getting older, right? He is playing alongside, Bam and Hero. So in my opinion, I think Bam and Hero would have the more of the benefit than Jimmy Butler. But maybe he can stay healthy this year. Or I know he's been struggling with some injury concerns, and obviously he is very efficient as well. And so if he's able to stay healthy, I feel like he's a very, very solid player. Obviously, he's also a small forward. So overall, I think Jimmy Butler at 33 is okay. I think he should be a little bit higher if he's able to play more games, but if not, then 33 around this range is fine.
Yeah, a 30-ish is pretty good for Butler. It's just the injury concerns. Last year, he sat out a lot of games. I felt like he missed a good amount of games because he sat out almost every back-to-back last year. However, it was one of his best seasons as of recent. 64 games played is pretty good for Jimmy Butler. If you look at his other seasons, he hasn't hit that 60 mark since 2019, 4 years ago. So if Jimmy Butler is able to play 65 games, he's gonna crush this value, honestly. It's just that he's getting older every season. I do see his points per game going higher just because they lost Gabe Vincent and Max Drews in order to make a move at somebody, right? In order to make a move at um Bradley Beal or Damian Lillard or Drew Holiday. They didn't land on any of them. So now there's no one to replace the production from Gabe Vincent, from Max Strus. They're gonna need more scoring. Jimmy Butler is the type of player to just do whatever his team needs. If the team needs someone to play make, we've seen Jimmy Butler 10, 11 assists. We've seen him get 10 to 12 rebounds. If they need someone to score. Jimmy Butler put up 40 points against Boston when they were really struggling on offense 3 years ago in the playoffs. So this season, I think if Miami wants to be competitive, if they still are going for a championship, they're gonna need Jimmy Butler. They're gonna need someone to pull the offensive load. So I could definitely see an uptick in Jimmy Butler's points. It's just I really like Jimmy Butler as a player. I don't really trust his knees at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Moving on from Butler, all right, we got Darius Garland. Okay, so Darius Garland is one of those players that, in my opinion, I feel like could still improve well, improve his game and improve even better as a player, right? You're becoming an all-star this season as well. Like just looking at stats really quick, he did 21 and 8 with 2 3 pointers per game. Struggle a little bit on efficiency, but overall, I feel like it's a very, very solid start for him this season. He is playing alongside, the number one option, Donovan Mitchell. So that does, hurt him a little bit. We obviously seen when Mitchell was injured, Darius Garland was able to fight that offensive fire. So maybe he can still do that this year. Maybe that would mean, less shots to go around for the other players. But if Garland's even able to average 24 points and then maybe up his assists to maybe 9 or 10 assists, I feel like he's gonna be a very, very solid guard in the league, even for fantasy wise. The issue is that, he's obviously a point guard, so it makes his desirability a little bit less. But overall, I kind of like Garland as a player, so I think his season this year should be pretty solid. 34 it's okay for Garland in my opinion. I think it's pretty solid for him in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's just right because he ranked he his average last year puts him at 38th, 39.9. And if you look at his totals, because he was able to play so many games, he was ranked 35th. So 34 is pretty fair. I honestly think you could probably snag him a little later just because about the time he gets drafted, most people aren't looking for point guards. Everyone already has maybe 1 or 2 point guard on their roster already. So especially if you're playing in a smaller league like an 8 man league, everyone's gonna have a point guard by now. So you could honestly try to snag him 40, 45. He could even slide to late 40s. So I wouldn't grab him too early unless you just don't have a point guard to fill. But his in terms of value, in terms of fantasy production, he should be around this 35.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Moving on to Julius Randle. Okay, so we kind of know what Julius Randle could is really like could do on the court in fantasy, right? Played 77 games, one of the most healthiest player that can play that is in fantasy, averaging 25 and 10, very, very solid, and also plays a power forward. So obviously the power forward role is very desirable since this year power forward is one of those positions that is very, I wouldn't say top heavy, but it is top heavy. After a few picks from the power forward, there's a major drop off. So if you are able to, I would say to try to get a power forward a little bit earlier so you don't have to be stuck with some boo boo power forwards. Um, but Julius Randle is not one of those boo boo power forwards. I'll tell you that right now. 25 and 10, very solid points production. If he's able to stay healthy as long, 76 games played, they're dropping his points a little bit. I'm assuming that's because of Brunson and the other players that they just kind of picked up. But I think overall, I think Julius Randle will be still a very solid pick in fantasy, and 35 is okay for him. If you could get him a little bit earlier, if you need a power forward, I would say it's worth it because there's not a lot of power forwards on the table after Julius Randle.
Yeah, I think Randall is slightly low. One, because like you said, power forward, pretty scarce position. The second reason is that his average was 34. Him being 35 is not too, basically, he's projected his average, but we've seen ESPN rank players a lot higher than their average ranking. They usually rank players more relatable to their total ranking. And if you look at their total ranking, Julius Randle, he was the 11th best player in fantasy last year, head to head points, right? And Sabonis was the fourth. He was put in the top 10. He's obviously not top 10 in terms of average. Same thing with Anthony Edwards in the top 10. Obviously, Anthony Edwards, I think he was around the 30 to 40th range. So Randall is slightly undervalued, in my opinion, in ESPN's rankings. I do think Randall should be 25 to 30.
Yeah, I could definitely see him going up to those levels right there. Moving on from Julius Randle, let's see who the next five is. We got Victor Wembanyama, Jaren Jackson Jr., Ingram, Cat, and Kawhi Leonard. Okay. This is a pretty solid. These are pretty solid five, in my opinion. Victor Wembanyama, let's start with him there. At 36 is okay. I know there's a lot of people that want Victor a lot earlier. I know when people first started mock drafting, they had Victor in the first two, like the second round, basically. And I was like, ooh, that's pretty high for Victor. Obviously he's going to be the number one option on the Spurs, and the Spurs system is going to try to make him maybe even be a better Tim Duncan. That's kind of how I see the Spurs play style for Victor. I'm just reading his stats really quick. 20 points, they're projecting like 20 points, 2.4 blocks, really, really good. 10 rebounds about, and shooting about 49% from the field. Okay. Ooh, 73 games played. Okay, 73 games played for Victor, especially that he's a 7'5" center, is kind of high, right? Basically, you guys don't know, there's a stat that tracks, players that are over 7 feet and they're very prone to injury, right? Maybe Victor can be the exception, but the odds are not in his favor. So 73 games is high in my opinion. 20 points, everything else I think is okay. I kind of want to see what he can really do on the NBA floor. So, him at 36, I think it's fine because, he is a center, but there are rumors that he might play power forward, and they're gonna put Zach Collins at center. So we don't know yet. Well, let's see where he puts his position at, because if he is a power forward, it makes him a little more desirable. But overall, I feel like him at 36 is okay. I feel like he should be maybe around this range.
Yeah, it's really hard to judge, but the 73 game seems very unrealistic to me. Just like you said, they're basically projecting him. They're taking away a 1 point from his international stats, a couple rebounds here and there, half a block. But I think these stats, obviously, he either blow it out the water, or he could not even touch these stats. He could underperform. In my opinion, I think these are fair projections. I do like that his free throws were pretty high. That's one of the correlations that most accurately describes whether or not players' jump shot is going to translate in the league. If you look at, there's a lot of players, they shoot well in college, but they don't shoot well in the NBA. But free throw is a pretty good indicator whether or not their jump shot's going to translate. Victor Wembanyama 83% last year on Paris. So I think his jump shot's able is going to be able to translate. Should probably hit more than 1 3 a game. So it just really depends with Victor.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Moving on from Victor, we got Jaren Jackson Jr., right? If you just take a look at his stats really quick, 18.6 points per game, 3 blocks, right? Defensive player of the year from just that alone. 1.6 threes, 7 rebounds, 1 assist. Very, very solid, right? He is a power forward too, so it makes him a little more desirable. Projecting him this year, right? I mean, last year he was coming off an injury for the first month or so. So this year, he obviously played for Team USA. So looking at the fact that he's not injured, I think he's going to be a very, very solid player alongside the fact that John Moran is also not going to be there for the first 25 games. So I'm looking for Jaren Jackson Jr. to have very, very high output in the beginning of the season. Maybe you guys can trade him after, when Near Jaw comes back, or if you just want to stick with them, stick with them. He's a good power forward. I feel like since that power forward position is limited, but if you guys want to trade him when he's doing really, really well, go for it, right? Maybe he gets somebody else back that's a little better than him. But overall, I feel like he's gonna be a very, very solid player in fantasy. He is still improving. But yeah, I think 37 is okay for Jaren Jackson Jr. You could grab him a little bit earlier if you want, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you should probably reach for him if you need a power forward, if you see that the power forwards are running out. I will say this about their projections is that I don't think that the rebounds and the blocks are going to be sustainable. He really did benefit last year from playing center. Steven Adams was out for a majority of the season. He was able to be the man in the middle, and he was able to grab almost 7 rebounds, 3 blocks per game. I think they slightly decreased, but with John Morant being out for a good amount of the season, and also John Morant's injury risk, I think that Jaren Jackson points will increase. It's been steadily increasing, so I think he can make another jump there. I just don't think the rebounding is reasonable. When we've seen him play power forward, it drops to 5.8, um, and it drops to 2.3 at best. The other season's only 1.6. So I do definitely see the blocks and the rebounds going down if I had to bet on it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Moving on from Jaren Jackson Jr., we got Brandon Ingram, right? So people, obviously ESPN ranked Brandon Ingram at 38. Even though he played 45 games, I'm assuming that Brandon Ingram's gonna develop more as a player, right? Last year he averaged 25 points per game, about 6 assists, 5.5 rebounds, and he was doing that without Zion there. Zion was injured for majority of the season. This year, Zion's healthy, or that's what they say. Ingram's going to be healthy starting off the season. So if he's able to stay healthy, playing alongside Zion, I kind of want to see what he's able to do. Right. I feel like if they're both able to stay healthy, I feel like they're gonna both be really, really solid in fantasy. I don't know how it's gonna really work out because the games we see them play are very limited. So overall, I think if they both get it to work out, I think Ingram and Zon should be very, very dominant in fantasy.
I definitely agree with you there. I think Ingram's being overlooked by a lot of people. If he's able to stay healthy, he could definitely make this 38 pick. He could definitely make the value off that. We just got to see how his game adjusts with Zion. Obviously, with Zion gone, he was able to score a lot, but his numbers dropped significantly with Zion. It seems like his game has took more of like a lot of stride recently. So if he's genuinely improved, maybe he could keep these numbers with Zion. But I think the fact that he's a small forward makes him a pretty good pick around this range.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you there. Moving on from Ingram, we got Karl-Anthony Towns. Oops, sorry. So obviously you had Cat last year. I'll just let you kind of introduce Cat. How about that?
Yeah, Cat was definitely frustrating last year. It was my second year rostering Cat, and the thing with Cat is it's either gonna win you the entire fantasy or it's gonna kind of bite you in the ass. You just have to kind of evaluate how much risk you're willing to take. Last year, I took him around this range. I think it's worth the risk. Considering if you're able to get him around this range, I would do it again. Actually, I dropped him a slightly earlier, but I think if you're able to get Cat after 30th, I think it's a really good get. A couple years ago, Cat's been going second round, even early second round. He's been like a 12 to 15th pick. Obviously Gobert is there, and like if you look at these rebound numbers, I don't think he's gonna get 9.3. It probably will be around 8. But if he's able to get his 24 point per game average back, I think that's very reasonable. He's averaged 26 points per game. So asking 24 points per game from him, I don't think it's that much of a reach. 20.8 was really just him dealing with injuries, and just it took some adjustment with him and Gobert. But if you look at the playoff series uh, against the Nuggets and him in the playing games, you really saw Cat being comfortable and being back to his old self.
Yeah, I could definitely see Cat doing a lot better than 20.8 points per game. I'll tell you that. I also like that he's very efficient. So if he's able to play 71 games, man, I think he should definitely be top 20, top 15 if he's able to get back to his old self. And then we have Mr. Load Management himself, Kawhi Leonard. Um, so Kawhi Leonard is one of those interesting players that he's okay with load management. He recently dropped a statement saying, hey, I'm gonna load manage. You can't expect, players to not load manage when they're putting so much stress on their body. I understand, right? And Kawhi Leonard doesn't seem like he's gonna really care if he gets fined or not for that. Just to the fact that he is gonna sit back to backs. But we know what he can do when he's playing on the court. You can look at his stats: 24 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, 4 assists, very, very efficient on the field goal and the free throws. So he's definitely a fantasy dream if he's able to play every single game, right? That's the con. He doesn't play every single game. And, last year he said he was healthy beginning of the season. I drafted him a little bit earlier, but as soon as I drafted him, Tyler was like, oh, he's not fully healthy. His knee has issues, needs to play 15 minutes per game for 20 games first. And I was just like, man, this is tough because I picked him a little bit earlier because I expect him to be healthy. But later on during the season, he was able to return his old self, playing 33, 34 plus minutes per game, which I was really, really happy with. So I think his stats are a little skewed just from the beginning of the season. He was injured, or he was not supposed to be injured, but he they said he was injured, so he had to rehab him, playing 15 to 18 minutes per game. And then near the end of the season was when we really saw him come back to his old self, and especially during that playoff series against the Suns. He was really, really dominating in that series. But after that series, I don't expect him to carry that into the new season. I expect him to go back to old Kawhi, play here and there, try not to get injured. And if he does get injured, he's gonna take some time to, ramp the minutes back up. So he is a small four, which is solid, but if he's able to stay healthy and doesn't get injured, I think you're basically getting almost a first round value from Kawhi if he's able to play more than 70 games. That's just how I'd see it.
Yeah, you just hit on the spot. I think even if you consider everything, I think 40 is I think it's very good for Kawhi. If you can get him at 40, I honestly think you should draft him before 35, maybe even 30. The forward positions aren't very good. So if he's able to play, if he's coming back healthy, like Alan said, he's top 10. We've seen him provide top 10 value, average 48 to 50 fantasy points per game. So, and even if he's not able to play, you can always draft someone in IR for now. And if he's resting back-to-back games, you can kind of try to finesse an extra game. So I think you should try to take him if he's available at 35. I think it's a pretty good spot for Kawhi.
Yeah, yeah. You just gotta hope that he's able to continue to play for you and be healthy. Moving on from Kawhi, we have our last five. We got James Harden. Okay, that's a long paragraph for Harden. Dinwiddie, Josh Giddey, Desmond Bane, and Jamal Murray. Okay, these are pretty solid five to end the video on. So we'll start off with James Harden, the man of the hour, right? We obviously there's new news report saying that Harden didn't show up for media day, and they're assuming that he's not going to show up for summer camp or basically for camp as well. I mean, Harden, man, Harden is very, very tough to gauge because when he's playing, if he's happy on a team like what we saw him did last year or last season, he's really really solid player. Top basically first rounder for sure, top 15 easily. But when he has issues, man, it's tough. He wants to big body his way out of 76ers at the moment, but we don't know what the situation is going on with, right? All we last I've heard of it is that he wants to get to the Clippers, and then the Clippers are offering him a bag of Skittles for Harden. Some of these are like, I don't want to give Harden up for that, and they think that he's still a very very a big piece to their championship run. I don't know. If Harden doesn't play, then he's not going to be 41. I'll tell you that. But if he does play and he just kind of swallows his pride, plays with Embiid for another year, he's definitely going to be easily top 20, top 25.
Yeah, I think if Harden gets traded, doesn't really matter which team to me. We've seen him play with Kevin Durant and Kyrie and still be a top 10 player. I think he's slowly regressing, slowly getting older though. But any team he goes to, I'll take him top 18, honestly. And if he goes to a bad team, he could even provide first round value, which I really like. The risk and the reason why I'm assuming they're putting Harden at 41 is if they don't trade him and Harden's just gonna sit out until the trade deadline, or even if he doesn't get traded at all because they just can't find a package for Harden, it could definitely be devastating rostering someone that doesn't play. So you just got to be aware of that. If Harden gets traded though, really like him. Not so much if they're just gonna force him in Philly.
Yeah, definitely agree with you there. Hopefully, it doesn't turn into like a Ben Simmons situation, man. I remember when I grabbed Ben Simmons when he was like, "Yo, I don't want to be in Philly." I thought he was gonna play, but shot up for the whole season, man. I was like, "Dang, bro." But moving on from Harden, we got Mr. Spencer Dinwiddie, right? I think Dinwiddie is gonna be also an interesting pick. I see that he's a shooting guard, but I think he should be a point guard this season, unless they grab somebody that slides him to shooting guard. But let's look at his stats really quick. 17 points per game, 6.5 assists. Okay efficiency, 44%, playing 79 games. Obviously, Mikhail Bridges is the number one option on the Nets. So Dinwiddie being there is more so to be his backup or his sidekick, I would say, right? But he is getting older, so I don't know where his ceiling is going to be at. Overall, I mean, let's look at his 40 was career high of 9.1 assists per game. Okay, maybe his assist does go up next season. They say 9.1, they put him 7. Okay, they try to balance it out, I guess. Oh well. I think overall Dinwiddie's gonna be solid as a player if he's able to play 76 games, but at 42 is a little bit early. I don't think he definitely should not be at 42. I think there's a lot of other players. Like I'm just looking down the list. I think I would grab almost any of these guys over Dinwiddie. But depends on on what position he plays and how he does in his first few games. It's very interesting for me. But I think Dinwiddie at 42 is a little bit high.
Agree with you there. I think he should be drafted after 50. If you look at his numbers after he got traded, post trade deadline numbers, he was ranked at 52, putting up 37 fantasy points per game. Even if he's able to maintain that, that's 52, right? And the fact that with Spencer Dinwiddie, I just don't think there's a lot of upside. If you look at someone like Josh Giddey, who's a lot younger, who's been showing huge strides of improvement, I think Josh Giddey has more upside than someone like Spencer Dinwiddie, especially if Dinwiddie gets shifted to point guard, which he most likely will, because unless they're going to run Ben Simmons at point guard, I'm sure they're going to put Ben Simmons at power forward, Cam Johnson at small forward, Mikhail at shooting guard, Dinwiddie the point guard. If Dinwiddie gets put at point guard, I don't even really like him at 50, to be honest. I think he should maybe even get drafted later than 50, maybe 60 to 65.
Yeah, I definitely can see that. It just depends on what position he plays. Hopefully he plays a shooting guard, but we'll see. Joe, we got next thing we got Josh Giddey, right? Like you kind of already said, carrying off what you said, he has a lot more upside than Dinwiddie, and in general, I think Josh Giddey has more upside as a player, right? OKC drafted him number 6, right? Looking at stats really quick, average 16.6 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and they're projecting him to have more rebounds, more assists. Okay, I think and more points. I think the points and the assists could go up for sure. The rebounds, I'm not sure. just because Chet is going to be there. And people are still unsure about how Chet's going to play in alongside Giddey. And I see people drafting Chet a lot earlier than Giddey. But in my opinion, I feel like maybe just because the positions, Josh Giddey is a point guard, but I feel like he should be a very, very solid pick for fantasy this year. 43 is okay. It's okay. If you guys want to take a little bit of risk, you can grab Josh Giddey here. I think playing with Chet should definitely benefit Giddey more than hurt him, in my opinion. So overall, I think 43, around this 43 to 50 range is solid for Giddey, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think Giddey is mainly a potential grab. I think it's a really good risk. He is a point guard, which makes it tough to get to him. There's probably going to be a lot of point guards that slide down, just because there's going to be abundance of him. But if you can get him a little bit later, I think Josh Giddey's a pretty good. Even if Chet plays alongside him, he's able to do a lot of stuff on the court. It's not just points with him. So I don't think he's going to lose much. Even if he does lose his touches, I don't think he's going to lose a lot of fantasy production.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Moving on from Giddey, we got Desmond Bane. Okay, so I think Desmond Bane's situation is similar to Jaren Jackson Jr. I think that he's going to have very, very high output in the beginning of the season because Jaw's not there, and then slowly come back to normal. But with that said, I think 21.5 points per game. Obviously, playing 58 games only is because of injuries. They're only projecting to do the same without when Dylan Brooks is not there anymore. Obviously, Marcus Smart is back, but I think you can easily do like 23, 24 points per game. Especially for the fact that, like I said, John Morant's gonna be there. So I wouldn't be surprised if his number was a lot higher in the beginning and then slowly comes back down to 24, 25 area. Overall, very efficient shooting free throws, efficiently shooting field goals as well. Shooting about three threes a game with the 3-point bonus. This definitely helps him as a player in fantasy. Overall, I feel like it's a solid pick. At 44, I think he should be a little bit higher, judging from that he is going to be a shooting guard too. So, I mean, I would get him over Dinwiddie, I'll tell you that, in a heartbeat. Maybe even Harden if Harden doesn't get traded easily.
Yeah, I like Desmond Bain a lot here. I honestly think he should be drafted probably above of everyone else I see on this screen. With Harden, it just depends whether he gets traded. But I really like Desmond Bain because of Ja being out. Dylan Brooks takes a ridiculous amount of shots per game. There's going to be 15, at least 15 more shots to go around. Desmond Bain can honestly move to small forward because if they start Marcus Smart and John Morant, then Desmond Bain being at small forward could provide you a lot of value. And you're right, I could see his points going up. It could stay the same, but if I had to bet on it, I think he can get to 24 points per game, especially
Yeah.
if Morant's going to be out.
Yeah. And, like you said, exactly right. I forgot to bring that up. It depends on where he plays too. Shooting guard is also desirable, but if he was a small forward, it makes him a little bit even more desirable. So Desmond Bane at 44, very, very solid pick. You can grab him at 44. And our last player on this list, we have Jamal Murray. All right. So the thing about Jamal Murray is that he did have a slow start. Um, he was coming off an injury, right? And then we really saw him pick it up about the mid-season and then really, really, really push it near the end of the season, right? Averaged 20 points per game, 6 assists, 4 rebounds. Um, only playing 33 minutes a game, only playing 65 games, which is very, very solid. Projecting him next year to do a lot better than this, in my opinion. The ESPN projecting him to do around the same, but after what I saw in the playoffs and them losing Bruce Brown, I feel like it should really allow Jamal Murray to develop more into a all-star level player. I think he's really all-star level. More into maybe borderline superstar level player playing alongside Jokic. I could definitely see that for Murray. We've seen him show up, time after time again on during the postseason. So now I'm just seeing if he's able to stay healthy in the season and put up really, really big numbers for fantasy, right? But overall, he is a point guard, so I do remember that. So if you do want Jamal Murray, don't try to grab like 4 or 5 point guards before you get to Murray because you're not. Don't try to grab Murray when you have 5 point guards already. You're gonna have 6 point guards. You're gonna be stuck with too many point guards, and there's only like 4 slots for you to put in point guard.
Yeah, I'm pretty surprised with this list. I think ESPN did a pretty good job towards back end of this list to 45. The only part I kind of disagree with is Spencer Dinwiddie. And I also would like to see John Morant here, but ESPN probably put him at 80 just because of all the controversy, which I disagree with. But going back to Jamal Murray, I'm really surprised they didn't rank Jamal Murray really high. It just seems like a ESPN thing to do, just kind of try to get clicks and try to jump on the hype train. But yeah, Jamal Murray had a really good postseason. It doesn't always translate to the regular season. I remember the first year in the bubble, everyone thought Jamal Murray was ready to be a top whatever player, and then he just was himself again, which is he's a very good player. And I think this 40th range, around this range, is reasonable. Like Alan said, there's going to be a ton of point guards though, so it might be hard to get to him if you already drafted a couple of point guards. But yeah, with Murray, I could definitely see these stats being higher than what it was last year. They're projecting only 1 point more. He did he really struggled in his first 15-ish games coming off an injury. They were kind of easing him in. There was games where he was only playing 20 minutes per game, but he should be ready to go now. I expect him to be fully healthy, so yeah, he could definitely make up this value at 45.
Yeah, I think that should wrap up our list. Is there anything else you want to say for them, Anson?
Yeah, if you guys disagree, if you guys have any comments, any questions, please let us know. We're going to be dropping part 4 to this. Going to cover up from 46 to 60. So stay tuned for that. And also make sure you guys subscribe because we're going to be dropping a lot more content. We're eventually going to get to mock drafts. Closer to the draft, we're going to get into rankings. We're going to give you guys undervalued, overvalued player, talk about specific tips so you guys can win next year for your guys' upcoming fantasy season.
Yeah, yeah. And if that's it, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Hope you guys have a great fantasy season, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.
Peace.